Okay.
Hi,
Good afternoon,
Wilson.
Ana.
Good
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
Ana.
Naririnig ako?
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. We'll start because it's
Yes.
already 3 o'clock. I think
Good afternoon.
Secretary Mon is also here already.
Yes. Good afternoon to Secretary Mon Lopez.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ana, good afternoon sa inyo lahat.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes. How do you call that? So it's 3 p.m. Hello
Yes.
to everyone. We'll officially start the forum. We are also live stream in Facebook and also in YouTube, on the social media platform of Manila Times, of course of Kamuning Bakery, and on my Facebook page, and also on APCU FB page. So we're it's not only Zoom but also in different social media platforms. So let's start officially the forum for today, for this afternoon. So to our APCU members and trustees, to our distinguished speakers, to our official media partner, the Manila Times, to our media friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the APCU Forum with 2022 APPCU laureate with the theme Opportunities and Challenges in the Philippines-China Relation under a Marcos Jr. presidency. My name is Ana Malindog Uy, and I am the moderator of this forum. As we all know, we have a pretty much new administration under the leadership of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And one of the many topics or concerns that people across the world, not only in the Philippines, speculate or is much talked about is how the Philippine-China bilateral relation would look like under a Marcos Jr. presidency. On many occasions, even before the inauguration of President Marcos Jr., to some extent, he shared his views on the future of Philippine-China relation in the years to come. In many ways, he reaffirmed the deepening ties and bilateral relation within the Philippines and China, and acknowledged that the country's relationship with China is indeed essential, and that China is one of the country's strongest partners, or has always been the country's strongest partner, our close neighbor, and our good friend. He even said that he wants the Philippine-China relation to be leveled up into a higher gear. President Marcos also often recalls the historical ties that bind Filipinos and the Chinese people, and in his view, the country's relationship with China is a very important relationship that needs to continue to evolve as the years go by, as the changes across the world keep on evolving, affecting the country and the Asia-Pacific region. This means that we need to maximize opportunities to further strengthen the mutual understanding and friendship between the Philippines and China on different levels, more particularly state to state and people to people. Nevertheless, just like any relationship, the Philippine-China bilateral relation is not a bed of roses. It has both opportunities and challenges. And the objective of this forum is to identify, discuss, and have exchanges on the various opportunities that need to be nurtured and maximized, and the challenges that the Philippine-China friendship is facing or will be facing under a Marcos Jr. presidency. On that note, without further ado, to start with our program for this afternoon's forum, let me call on General Fernando Pase, APCU Treasurer, for the invocation. Sir Dean, kindly proceed with the invocation.
Thank you, Professor Ana. And let us all put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Almighty Father, once again we ask you to bless all of us who are gathered here this afternoon for our APCU Forum for this month. Also, bless this event that we may be able to gain valuable knowledge that would be of great help to all of us. But most of all, bless our distinguished speaker, one of APCU's 2022 Outstanding Laureate, who shall impart to us his wisdom on the topic Opportunities and Challenges in Philippines-China relations under a Marcos Jr.'s presidency. Likewise, bless also our highly esteemed panel of reactors, a former cabinet secretary and one coming from the academy. which shall also share the respective knowledge of this important topic and hopefully enlighten us further about this issue. Lastly, Lord, may this forum be lively and productive, and may the desired outcome be achieved. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sir Ding. For the next part of our program, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the Chairman of APPCU, Secretary Raul Lambino, for the opening remarks. Secretary Lambino, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anna. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. Let me begin by extending to our panel of speakers, as well as our guests and members in attendance, a warm welcome to another edition of our regular APCU Forum. The subject of today's discussion is more important than usual. Even as our country's economy struggles to recover from 2 years of the pandemic, we face a hostile world on the brink of recession. But there is room for optimism about the future of the country. We are in the first few enthralling weeks of a new president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who was voted into power by a landslide that none of his predecessors in post-EDSA Philippines ever achieved. How President BBM will employ this historic mandate to steer the country back into sustained growth, to ensure food and energy security, and to conduct foreign relations with Asian neighbors like China and traditional allies like the United States of America will be closely watched, scrutinized, and evaluated by policy experts on both sides of the Pacific. In today's forum, we shall explore in broad strokes the opportunities waiting to open up as he guides the Philippines through sometimes testy waters in its relationship with China. And where opportunities thrive, there are bound to be challenges. That these challenges are and might be, our panel of experts will help us to understand better amid lingering uncertainties. Suffice it to say that President Marcos Jr. has inherited from President Rodrigo Duterte a bilateral relationship between the Philippines and China anchored on being good neighbors amid deepening friendship and mutual understanding. And from this warming relationship, the Philippines has harvested economic benefits today. China is the largest trading partner of the Philippines. And not only its #1 partner, but China is also the country's #1 source of imports, #2 market for our exports, our second largest source of tourists, and a major foreign investor and source of loans for our Build program. While conflicts in the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea remain, the Duterte presidency forged friendly and pragmatic relations with China on other issues. Today, the signals from Beijing are looking positive. Chinese President Xi Jinping sent Vice President Wang Qishan to the inauguration ceremony of President Marcos as his special representative. This was seen as reaffirmation of how much China values its ties with the Philippines. But we have questions to ask. Apart from infrastructure and trade, what other fields can offer fresh opportunities for bilateral cooperation under the Marcos presidency? Is cooperation possible in the critical areas of food security, agriculture, and energy? All of these have been impacted by the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which entered its 5th month in July with its resolution nowhere near in sight. So let's hear it from our panel of experts. What opportunities and challenges lie ahead in China-Philippine relations? Our main speaker today is Mr. Wilson Lee Flores, a good friend, and one of those who have really contributed in strengthening the understanding and friendship between the Philippines and China. He is an APCU 2022 laureate in the Outstanding Contributions category. Mr. Flores is honorary chairman of the Anvil Business Club and board member and chairman of the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Spices in Corporate Public Information and Media Committee. He is also moderator of the Pandesal Forum at the 83-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe in Quezon City. He is joined by a panel of reactors, namely former Secretary of Trade and Industry, Ramon Lopez, and Professor Bobby Tuason, a brother in fraternity, who is Director of Policy Studies at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance. Professor Tuason is also a political analyst and former chairman of the Political Science Program of UP Manila. Our moderator today is Professor Ana Malindugoy. So a warm welcome to all, and let's get going. Thank you. Mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Secretary Lambino, for that stimulating and motivating welcome remarks. Friends and colleagues, to introduce our main speaker for today's APCU Forum with the Award for Promoting Philippines-China Understanding 2022 laureate, let me play a short audio-visual presentation. John, please play the video.
Wilson Lee Flores is a multi-awarded writer, educator, poet, columnist, author of 5 books, economics, pop culture, politics, geopolitics, analyst, and entrepreneur. He also describes himself as a social worker and is undertaking various philanthropic and cultural projects either in his capacity or as an officer of various non-government organizations. He is the honorary chairman of Anvil Business Club, board member and chairman of Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce Industry Incorporated, Public Information and Media Committee, and moderator of Pandesal Forum at 83-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. Among his unique civic and cultural projects include donating several public school buildings to rural communities in the Philippines, moderating the non-partisan Pandesal Forum, which hopes to help elevate the public discourse on national and global issues, and having his 83-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe, in cooperation with Quezon City Hall, baked and distributed thousands of loaves of bread for a month in 2020 during the lockdown due to the pandemic to all QC government hospitals, medical and security frontliners, and shelter for the homeless. As a writer, Wilson has written on different diverse topics ranging from business, economics, pop culture, humor, and arts to politics, winning him a record of 15 Catholic Mass Media Award, or CMMA. This is thus far the highest number of CMMA ever won by a person of this prestigious award. Various award-giving bodies have likewise recognized him for his exemplary work as a writer, a media practitioner, and an entrepreneur with social-civic endeavors. These recognitions include the Quezon City's highest honor for most outstanding citizens, the 2018 Manuel L. Quezon Gawad Parangal Award, and the 2012 Maestro Award from Grace Christian College. Some of his notable writings promoting the better Philippines-China understanding centered on the anti-colonial revolutionary and World War II cooperation as allies between the Philippines and China, how Chinese entrepreneurs contributed to Philippine progress, the struggles and socio-economic contributions of ethnic Chinese entrepreneurs to Philippine national life since the Spanish colonial era, and the Chinese immigrant entrepreneurs throughout Philippine history. He pioneered in writing about the often misunderstood and unheralded immigrant Chinese entrepreneurs and humanized their stories of struggles on his weekly Monday column called Roots of Philippine Business for the Manila Chronicle newspaper. Wilson believes that industries of Chinese immigrants' struggles and positive contributions to the Filipino nation building are priceless stories integral to the Filipino national heritage. Wilson also researched, traced, and verified the ancestral roots of Philippine national hero Dr. Jose Rizal in the village of Zhanggu in Xinjiang of Fujian Province, Southeast Asia. In his articles, he proposed the installation of a Rizal monument in Fujian, which was eventually realized with the world's largest Rizal monument of 18.61 meters in height and even a huge Rizal Park. Both are now symbols of the ancient bond of friendship between the Philippines and China. This year, the awards for promoting Philippines-China Understanding, or APCU, recognizes Wilson Lee Flores as one of his worthy recipients for his efforts and contributions to facilitating a better understanding of the Chinese culture and the Chinese community in the Philippines through his writings as well as through his many socio-civic and cultural initiatives. As a media practitioner, Wilson has done much not only to promote Chinese culture but also open up avenues for Filipino to appreciate better the ethnic Chinese community and their positive role in the development, nation building, and sustained cooperation between the Philippines and China.
Friends and colleagues, with great pride, our main speaker for today's forum is no other than Mr. Wilson Lee Flores. Mr. Flores, please proceed with your presentation. Thank you. You're also a co-host, so you can unmute yourself and also you can share screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ana Malindogoy, moderator. Also, thank you very much to, of course, our respected Secretary Mon Lopez, one of the best officials of the last administration. Thank you also to APCU, the officers led by Chairman Secretary Raul Lambino, a good friend, and also a Suki of Kamuning Bakery since before. Also, I'd like to acknowledge your president, Mr. Jeffrey Nang, very hardworking intellectual and economist. Thank you also to General Fernando Pace earlier. And I'd like to acknowledge also an official of the Council of Foreign Relations. I saw his name here, Colonel Alejandro Flores, also an expert on foreign affairs. And thank you to the media friends who are here. This is a short presentation talk, and then more I'd like to hear from Secretary Mon Lopez later on in the open forum, and there will be a question and answer part. During the last awarding ceremony, I was supposed to give a very short 1-minute speech, but since I noticed the audiovisual was quite long, I just said 2 sentences lang, so I wasn't able to make a short 1-minute speech. I'll start with expressing thank you to APCU and mentioning the 1-minute speech that I was supposed to deliver at the awarding ceremony. For why I am very inspired and very committed to helping promote Philippine-China understanding, I'd like to mention and thank a few people. Next, slide sana, Larissa. I'll mention lang in a few seconds some people I'd like to acknowledge through the years who have encouraged me to study the issue of Philippine-China relations and also why we should promote it for the betterment of the Philippines and the future of the country, why our neighbor is very important. The slide, PowerPoint, Larissa.
Clarissa, you're a co-host, so you can share screen.
Larissa, you can share. Oo, nasaan? Nasaan yung screen? For a few seconds. Next. The title I was given was quite intriguing and very interesting. Opportunities and challenges for Philippine-China relations under a Marcos Jr. presidency. A lot of people see opportunities, but we should not forget there are challenges we have to overcome. Next, I'd like to spend a few seconds only to thank people like this. These are my parents. My mother taught me that the importance of Asia and China in the future of the world and the Philippines. My late father naman, who died, even though he died at age when I was 7, his entire family has been doing a lot of things to help Philippine-China relations for 270 years here in the country. Next slide. In 2003, when I nominated my uncle, Ambassador Howard D. to the Jose Rizal Award, when he won this award for his philanthropy, he called me up suddenly one night. Sabi niya, Wilson, I've been invited to make the speech for all the winners. Can you give me the name of the first person from our family that came from Fujian, China to the Philippines? Sabi ko, why, Uncle? Sabi niya, I want to mention his name and thank him. Without him, we are not all here in the Philippines. But at that time, I had no idea who he was. So sabi ko, sorry, that's a good idea. And then now that I won this award, sabi ko, I will mention his name in the award. Kasi na-research ko na. But hindi ko minention kasi the audiovisual I noticed was quite long. So I did not make the speech anymore. Next slide. The first person pala that came here to the Philippines from our family sa father's side was 270 years ago, 1752. I'd like to thank him. Without him, we are not all here. Even though his name was Mr. D.P.K. He was my great-great-great-great-grand-uncle. This is the page in the family tree that I researched. Next slide. And his cousin, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, they both came here the first generation. His name was D.P. Locke. They came here and it was very bleak during that time. Not only for the Filipinos, it was very dark. The Spanish colonial rule wasn't very good for the Philippines politically, economically. For the ethnic Chinese minority, it was even worse. I had no time to go into it, but it wasn't the best of times. And Philippine-China relations wasn't good also at that time. Next. But I was inspired by them because no matter what regime, whether Spanish time, American era, World War II, our family members kept promoting Philippine-China understanding in different ways. And then I'd like to make special thanks. When I was in college, there was a famous Manila Bulletin Panorama magazine columnist. His name was Alfredo Navarro Salanga. I was in college. I would write fan letters to all these columnists, and he was one of those who would write me and even invited me to his house and gave me a book about China. Nagulat din ako when I was researching his life before the APCU award, APPCU award. I saw in his biodata that he was one of the earliest members of APCU pala in the 1970s, the late Alfredo Navarro Salanga. Next, he was a poet, an intellectual. He gave me this book, which I recommend to all APCU people, the media, and everyone. He gave me this book as a gift. 2 books actually. This one of them, In Search of History. I think still one of the best books on history, not only of China, even USA and the world. Written by Theodore White, one of the best journalists from the West to have ever covered China. It was so amazing, that book. Theodore White was a Harvard summa cum laude graduate. He studied Chinese language and also history, summa cum laude, and went to China in the 1940s to write for Time magazine. He covered the revolution, World War II, met Mao, Zhou Enlai, and everybody. Up to the 1960s, he wrote about Kennedy and all this. Wonderful book given to me by Alfredo Navarro Salanga. So thank you to that intellectual, Mr. Salanga, and to Theodore White. Next slide. Also, this one, I have to thank this person, Dr. Jonathan Spence. He just died last year at age 85. One of the best intellectuals in the West about China history. He wrote the next slide. He wrote this, one of my favorite books, The Search for Modern China. I have read every single book he has written. This is one of the best. And he was one of the most popular professors in the entire Yale University. Every year when he was teaching Chinese history, his classes are always used to be jam-packed when he was still alive. Thank you to all these people. Next slide. opportunities. What are opportunities that I see in the under the Bongbong Marcos presidency for Philippine-China relations? This is very known to all of us. Infrastructure cooperation, whatever the headlines say or the little disagreements or lack of agreement yet on some details, the infrastructure cooperation of the Philippines and China is one great opportunity for the Philippines, because everyone here knows that China is a world power in infrastructure. All of us should go there and try their high-speed train. Their airports are amazing, and they have excess steel. They produce the world's highest amount of steel and other equipments in massive scale. They have economies of scale, and they have track record that other countries do not have. So we in the Philippines, we are in need of infrastructure, and they had this Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which is perfectly in sync with the Philippines Build, Build, Build. Parang perfect match these two programs. These are the bridges given to the Philippines from China, the Binondo Intramuros Bridge. Next slide. This one naman, Estrella Pantaleon. These are just few of the visible signs of the fruits of infrastructure cooperation. I'd like every one of us to go and research the analysis of our moderator, Ms. Ana Malindog-Uy, about the recent issue about infrastructure loans comparing China and other countries. She has a very good analysis of why the interest rate is not only factor we should study, also the actual cost. We could have very low interest rate, but actually the selling price is very high. You know naman, di ba, yung mga Bombay sa kalsada, they would go sell you very expensive things to the ordinary people, but interest rate, di ba? So we should be careful to consider the infrastructure, not only the interest rate, but also the overall construction price and materials. Next slide. This is, I saw this by British Broadcasting Corporation. They had the report saying that China in the last few years had spent for global infrastructure projects already double every year what the US is spending also worldwide. So we should not miss out on this this Belt and Road Initiative. Let us seize the opportunity of China going out to the world to build infrastructure. Let us grab a big slice of that budget, that low interest, long-term loans, and build the infrastructures that we need all over the country. Next slide. This is a topic I would like to hear former Secretary Mon Lopez to discuss in more detail. I'm glad that APCO invited him now today, because he is one of the champions of RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, the world's largest free trade agreement. This is a great opportunity again for the Philippines. I want to ask later on what happened, why some of our politicians are slow in approving this while other countries already approved it. It will open up the markets of China, South Korea, Japan, 10 ASEAN countries, New Zealand, and Australia. I heard there are complaints, there are people saying that we should protect this agriculture sector or other sectors, claiming we are not yet prepared, we will lose out now if we open our market. I remember reading those complaints also when China was planning to enter the WTO before, years ago, World Trade Organization. Many people within China, protectionist forces, were complaining that their economy will be eaten up by the bigger companies, by bigger industrial countries. But they boldly took the risks and opened up to the world. Globalization, may plus and minus yan, but the net positive effect look at what happened to China ever since they opened to WTO. Now some Westerners are even complaining that why did they allow China to enter WTO now? But at that time, there were some protectionist elements in China economy, in the domestic sector, who were anti-globalization. I think if we have to err in favor of openness, globalization, and competition with the rest of the world. And what better way than RCEP? Later on, we'll ask Mon Lopez, Secretary, for that. Next slide. Another great opportunity. I remember in the 1990s, there was an American journalist from Far Eastern Economic Review interviewed me. He said, why do you think the Philippines will have a great tourism industry? And I told him something that delighted him. He wrote about it in his magazine. I said that many people do not notice it. The Philippines is culturally, geographically, and in terms of temperature, we are the most ideal tourism paradise in ASEAN, more than our neighbors, especially for China. Look at in Europe, the most famous tourist spots are Spain, Greece, France. All these are hotter places compared to the Northern Europe areas. They have beaches, they have waters, they have Latin culture, easygoing lifestyle. All those things we have in the Philippines, more than Thailand, Malaysia, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Indonesia. So we offer actually more to China. Next slide. Also, the reason in Europe, all the hardworking cold winter countries like Germany, they love to go to those Southern Europe places. We are the Europe, we are the Greece, we are the France and Spain of Asia, not in terms of temperature lang and beaches and islands, but we have the culture that other countries do not have. Singapore might be hot like us, warm, walang winter, but they don't have the laid-back Latin culture that we have. We are the only former Spanish colony in Asia, so we are very unique from the rest of Asia. We're not boring. When the Chinese tourists go to Singapore, it's like a small Shanghai. But when they come to the Philippines, it's like going to Latin America and Europe. So I see after the pandemics, no pandemics last forever. I suggest that all of us in the Philippines, let us please be ready for a possible tourism tidal wave, not only from China, but Eastern Asia under the Marcos administration. Next slide. Also, one thing I always tell people, especially to people in China, the Philippines and China have complementary economies. We are not competitors like South Korea, Japan, and other industrialized countries. We are developing while China is industrialized already. We have a lot of natural resources. They have capital, they have technology, they have a huge market. So we are complementary. So this is the perfect time to boost economic relations with China under the new administration. Also, agriculture is one big sector. Hopefully, we could learn from China. Imagine they have 1.4 billion people they could feed every day. There's no famine there. There's no talk of food shortage in China. To me, that's amazing. We should learn from them how to till our arable lands. We have more arable lands here. We don't have winter. We don't have autumn. They have winter, and yet they could feed their people. And also, the good news I read in the news about agriculture, fertilizer. Hopefully, China can help us with fertilizer. Next slide, please. Another great opportunity I hope will be pushed by all people of APCU and all sectors is joint exploration and development of possible energy resources in the sea. We in the Philippines, some areas we call it West Philippine Sea. They call it South China Sea, the entire area. Whatever we call it, the most important thing is jointly cooperate, hopefully, and get something out of those resources if they are really there. I heard and I read that the Malampaya, Palawan province oil natural gas site there, the terms are not very advantageous, I heard, to the Philippines. I will ask later on Secretary Mon Lopez if totoo yung marites na we only get 10-20% of it, the Philippines. I don't know. But I heard and I've read so many times, China has been offering us 60%, and China will get 40% for joint exploration. It's a risky and expensive venture. On our part, no risk. So that this is a great opportunity. We should hopefully boldly start in the next coming 6 years. Next slide. This one also, I noticed that the Marcos family has a special goodwill in the memory of a lot of Chinese leaders and even the ordinary people. They remember the Marcos family for pioneering Philippine-China diplomatic relations in the 1970s. Up to now, the very old officials will still tell us about this visit. I researched this picture. 1974, a year before diplomatic relations were opened, that was still the Cold War era, ideological rift between the so-called communist and socialist countries and the so-called free world. This was 1974, and I researched that in the picture on the beside Chairman Mao Zedong, the founder of modern China, was the 17-year-old Bongbong Marcos. He was 17 pala at that time, not yet even voting age. He accompanied his mother, then First Lady Imelda Marcos, and special envoy to start the groundbreaking visit to resume relationships between Philippines and China. I think in China, they have a long memory, more than us, more than the Western countries. They remember old friends, whatever happened. Next slide. So we should take advantage of this. In 1975, they resumed relationship. So hopefully, we in the Philippines know how to maximize our advantages. One advantage we have, we can tell them, the president now was part of the family that pioneered relationship with you. Treat us better than your other Asian neighbors. Give us more competitive edge in the Philippines for tourism, for more investments, hopefully more agriculture, technological aid, whatever support they could give us more. Because this young guy, now no longer young, the president now is part of the family that pioneered relationship. This old picture I saw, 1975, I think, the one beside President Marcos and Imelda Marcos are the daughters, Amy Marcos and Irene Marcos Araneta. And next slide. An example of how they remember good old friends. This is a historical marker in honor of the Sultan of Sulu, who went on a state visit to Beijing 600 years ago. For most people, we don't even remember who our great-grandfathers are 200 years ago. But in China, they remember friends. Whatever happened to them, whether the country went up and down, there's no longer even a Sulu kingdom now. It's part of the Philippines, but they still honor him with a marker and a very massive mausoleum because he died on the way back to the Philippines. On the right side, that's an exhibit in the museum beside his mausoleum. That's the Balangay boat used by the Sulu Sultan. I think hundreds of them in the delegation when they went to Beijing, and the Chris, a Chris there. So they still remember all these things. So let us maximize and take advantage of the Marcos goodwill and historical memory of the Chinese leaders and get better terms, get better business, get more tourism. Next slide. Next slide is, instead of the Philippines, we always fear that the Philippines would become a pawn in superpower rivalries, whether we will become pro-US, pro-China, pro-Russia. Instead of thinking about that, as my suggestion is, why not the Philippines become a middleman mediator and peacemaker between the East and the West. What I mean is be a mediator between China and America like what we were hundreds of years ago. Next slide. Many people forgot already. I remember years ago when Senator Edgardo Angara launched a coffee table book at Manila Peninsula. He had a big reception there to launch a coffee table book about the galleon trade. He invited the ambassador of Mexico, ambassador of Spain, and other countries there. And when I went there, I whispered to Senator Angara, "Sir, next time you have to invite the China ambassador." He said, "Why? You forgot." "Sir, look at the galleon trade. The galleon trade was essentially the Philippines, Manila, being middleman between China and the West. We were the great entrepot, Manila, 250 years, one of the first examples of globalization. From 1571 to 1815, Manila became one of the greatest seaports in Southeast Asia, dominating commerce between China and the so-called New World under Spain and other countries, Mexico, Latin America. Chinese silk and porcelain and other goods were exported to the so-called New World through the Philippines. And from there, the New World silver of Mexico and America, North America, South America, went to the Philippines to China. The next slide. This is an example of the cross-section of the galleon ships that were used. They used Philippine lumber, mga kahoy ng Pilipinas, to build these massive galleon ships. There was almost no economy under the Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. Mainly the galleon trade fed the economy and the Spanish people. And the Chinese minority in the Philippines actively participated as traders, boat builders, as money lenders also for this galleon trade between the East and the West. Next slide. So suggestion ko, why not in the 21st century, instead of always thinking that the Philippines might be in danger of becoming a pawn in the middle of superpower rivalry between China and the USA, why don't we try to make ourselves the middleman of trade, commerce, and cooperation and understanding between East and West? Why don't we be the peacemaker also? Next slide. That is my proposition and suggestion to everyone. We are the only, I think, most westernized country in Asia, but we are still at heart, our soul is very Asian. So we understand the West very well. I think we are more American than many Americans, but we are also very Asian and we have ancient connections with China. So I believe sincerely that we in the Philippines could be the middleman between the growing, disturbing misunderstanding between USA and China. There's almost like a Cold War now between these two biggest economies in the world. We need the two of the biggest economies in the world to work together again as partners, as trading partners, not to be a trade war, which is look at what is happening in the world. It's bad for the whole world. Next slide. What are the challenges I see for Philippines-China relations under Bongbong Marcos? This issue of the politicization of Philippine-China relations. I'm very worried that every election time, some well-meaning, idealistic politicians in the opposition and other sectors always raise the China issue as a political issue. To me, that is very worrisome. That will destabilize the long-term future of Philippine-China relations. I'm worried because I want the Philippines to be a very good, favorable, positive brand in the China market, the world's biggest market for tourism exports. I don't want our Philippine brand name to be blighted by politics or controversy. What are the reasons? I have these 4 flags here. Malaysia, we have a long-standing territorial disagreement with Malaysia over Sabah. There's a latest news, I think in Europe, France, or somewhere, we just won a legal case, the Sulu Sultan heirs, over their claim for Sabah State. That is proven natural resources yan. And for the Philippine standpoint, that is not disputed territory. That is historically, legally ours. Unlike the islands in the sea, there are so many claimants overlapping. This one very clearly Philippines. And the British got it and gave it to Malaysia without our consent. But Philippine-Malaysia ties is not a political issue every election time. When you see the Malaysian flag, it's not a political issue. So hopefully we can turn China-Philippine relations to normal, not always political issue. Japan also, the flag there. After World War II, after the very sad experience we had, 3 years of Japanese military occupation, 1 million people died in the Philippines out of 13, 15 million population. But now, when you say Japan or Philippine-Japan ties, there's no more rancor, there's no more drama, there's no more political theater there and angry noises. Let's make Philippine-China relations also beyond politics. What I propose is let us depoliticize diplomacy with China. The last flag there is Vietnam. Actually, when you look at, I want to verify later on with our expert, Ms. Ana Malindog-Uy, and other people in the audience. I think, if I'm not mistaken, our neighbor and good friend Vietnam has occupied more islands and shoals there in the disputed West Philippine Sea than even China and other countries. But Vietnam is not every year, every election season, a political issue. Why? Why can't we make China-Philippine relations normal also like Vietnam? That is my question. That is a challenge that I see. Let us depoliticize the China diplomacy issue. Next slide. Another concern for me, I write a column in Philippine Star. I'm part of media. I respect Philippine press freedom and media. I am for press freedom, vigorous freedom of expression. But I think there is a lot of misunderstanding in media about Philippine-China relations and even about China itself. So I'm very worried. Like last Sunday, these are some of the front pages of the newspapers. I read all papers pala every day, physically and online. I'm a media junkie. I love to read papers here or abroad. On the upper part is the tabloid of Philippine Star. It's Filipino Star ngayon. The title there says, China atras sa 3 railway projects ng Pinas. There's in red on the right side, you will see may subtitle pa nakalagay, di na popondohan. It means China has already backed out of 3 railway projects in the Philippines, and the red headline says, no longer wanting to fund the projects. But I think that's not the real story. They have misunderstanding of the real situation. I know si Ms. Ana Malindog-Uy and other experts know the real details. And also the front page of Inquirer, the title also, Debt Trap Avoided, Review of China Loans Push. The same news, the same day, different headlines, very disturbing to me. I think, in fairness, the Manila Times Sunday newspaper had a more cerebral, balanced headline. The title is Renegotiate China Loan Deals. Marcos, I think that is nearer what is the real story. The new administration wants to renegotiate the pending application for railway projects that has not yet been consummated. So I think there is a lot of animosity from the Western and international media towards China that has been there for decades, hindi lang Cold War era. And we in the Philippines, as the most westernized society, I think in Asia, we are bombarded almost every day by Western media, international media, with also the misunderstandings. That to me is a major challenge to us in Philippine society, how we can improve the misunderstanding and do away with all these wrong notions and wrong information. So congratulations to APPCU for doing a lot of good work in this regard. Your every forum, your every occasion promoting dialogue and information is big help to change this, what I see as media misunderstandings. Next slide. This is my personal opinion. I was invited a few years ago by Solita Monso, the TV host of GMA7, also columnist of Inquirer, and she asked me point blank, Wilson, what is your analysis of this Pogo? What is your opinion on this? And I said, Professor Solita Monso, personally, I am against gambling of all kinds. Personally, morally, I am against the idea of gambling. It's bad for society. It's bad for the morals of people who gamble. It might be, but I said, I'm a balanced and fair person. At that time when she asked me, I said the good thing about the Pogo at that time, it was able to help boost the Philippine real estate sector. It brought a lot of jobs to the Philippines. It had pluses and minuses, but I'm torn between the moral dimension of it. I'm very disturbed also that China itself considers Pogo, the online gambling operations, as illegal. So I told her that, and she kept asking me like a judge in the court. No. You cannot say you are against gambling and you are for the good things that they bring to the economy. You have to say yes or no. Are you for it or against it? So now, personally, I see after 2 years and 3 years of what has happened to the Pogo in the Philippines, I think this is a continuing challenge to us. I think that is a danger to Philippine-China relations if we pour too much approvals or too much resources on this type of investments in the Philippines. There are more investments in China that we should attract. We should attract the industrial investments. When you go to Vietnam and China had fought a short war in the 70s or 80s, but you have thousands of China export factories in Vietnam. Why don't we attract those and other good investments? This, I think, is a little bit, to me, it's a challenge and danger to Philippine-China relations, because personally, my analysis, I'm not saying I'm correct. Pogo is illegal in China. So legally speaking, all these operators of Pogo are crooks in the eyes of China in the law internationally, and we attract all of them to come here. They might bring in other nefarious or controversial things that might endanger Philippine-China relations in the long term. Next slide. Another challenge that I see, this was discussed before by General Victor Corpus at Pandesal Forum when he went there physically. And during the election season, Princeton University graduate Professor Walden Bello, who, by the way, coined the term West Philippine Sea, he's a nationalist. He is not pro-China or pro-US. He said that South China Sea is actually an American lake, because in the eyes of China and other countries, you can see all these military bases of the US surrounding China. And 5 of these in the middle, 5 of those are in the Philippines. We are host to 5 US military bases due to EDCA. I just see this as a challenge. How do we manage the US military presence in the Philippines in the context of superpower rivalry between the 2 superpowers? That is, to me, a challenge, because we want to be neutral, we want to be friends with all countries, and we don't want to be part of their superpower rivalry. Next slide. These are the 5 bases of the US all over, and they are here through EDCA. They are here through Visiting Forces Agreement and the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. I'm not commenting whether it's totally good or bad, but I personally see these agreements as vestiges of our colonial past. Is it time now for us to renegotiate and review all these things to make sure the Philippine national interest is the prime consideration, not superpower interests of any one country? can we make ourselves totally neutral of both countries and make sure that the whole ASEAN has no foreign military presence, has no nuclear-powered submarines and ships? That to me is a question. And I think this is a challenge, continuing challenge for Philippine-China or even Philippine-Russia or Philippine-other relations if we still have this, what I see as umbilical cord to our former colonizer. Next slide. Of course, the territorial disputes, the disagreements in the sea beside the Philippines is a continuing irritant, a thorn in the between the two countries' relationship. Hopefully, I remember si Ambassador Chito Santa Romana, the former outstanding Philippine ambassador to Beijing. He told me in a conversation, he said, Wilson, do you know, China has negotiated many of its border areas with all the countries around it. And every country that they negotiate bilaterally, sometimes 10, 20 years, sometimes 40 years, whether it's Vietnam land border, the Russia-China border in Siberia, usually they negotiate dialogue quietly, bilateral, and they quietly sacrifice some of their claims. So I hope for this dispute, I agree with APCU and other experts. Please, we don't use hopefully megaphone diplomacy. We don't shout at each other, whether our side or their side or other countries. I think dialogue and bilateral negotiations as friends would be a great way to resolve this irritant. I see this only as an irritant, and I hope under Bongbong Marcos presidency, this will continue what has happened in the past 6 years. And let us lessen the noise in the disagreement and increase the noises in the cooperation side in other sectors. Let us not poison bilateral relations by a small irritant, a small thorn that might sour and endanger bilateral relations. Next slide. I researched, there's a Bible quotation. Most of the people in the Philippines, we are mostly Christians. There's a Bible verse in Proverbs 27:10-11. And a key phrase inside this Bible verse says, better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. So, and then when I sent this to a friend, a businessman in Shanghai 2 days ago, he told me, there's a Chinese proverb like that. I said, there is. So I researched it. The Chinese proverb is this one down there on the right side. A close neighbor means more than a distant relative. Let us not forget that Philippines and China, we are destined to be partners. We did not choose it. God made us geographically neighbors. And I remember a young diplomat told me 2 weeks ago, he said, and I could not forget, he said, China is a near and ancient long friend. Long meaning thousands of years friend, and near, we are less than 2 hours away by flight from the nearest seaport in China. While the US is a new, very new friend, 100 plus years, not even 150 years friend, and very far away, 17,000 kilometers ba yan sa LA? 11,756 kilometers Manila to LA. So if there's a fire in our neighborhood, we cannot go to our cousin 11,000 kilometers away. We have to knock on the door of our neighbor. So I'm not saying we ignore the far relative or our friends, but let us not forget a close neighbor is very important to our destiny. And I think the Bongbong Marcos administration is another golden opportunity for the Philippines to, number one, normalize our Philippine-China relations, depoliticize it. Number two, to strengthen it. Bongbong Marcos even mentioned a few weeks ago, he wants more cultural ties. That means writers, artists, and artists. Also students to students. He even mentioned military exchanges. Let us promote. Next slide. Look at that. I saw this nice picture before. I don't know where it was taken. That's former President Duterte and Jackie Chan with Panda. So let us promote better relations between two countries under this administration. This is, I think, a great opportunity to normalize and strengthen our ties and to make the Philippines more competitive in the China market compared to our ASEAN and Asian competitors. Let us see the neighbors as competitors for the big China market. Let us see China as a great opportunity. Thank you.
For that very enlightening
Thank you.
and very informative presentation. It was really done well. Thank you so much. Moving forward to introduce our speaker reactor for this forum, may I call one of the directors of APPCU, the chairman or the chairwoman for Youth Committee, Ms. Mappy Hongchai. Ms. Mappy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Anna. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am honored to introduce our next distinguished speaker. He was the Secretary of the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry and served for a full term of President Rodrigo Duterte administration. He chaired during his term the DTI institutions such as the Board of Investments, the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, the Export Development Council, Anti-Red Tape Authority Advisory Council, Philippine International Trading Corporation, Center for International Trade Expositions and Missions, and the Halal Board. He also supervised attached agencies such as the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, and the Cooperation Development Authority, among others. He has been a presidential management staff during June 1981 to June 1982. He was serving with Department of Trade and Industry since July 1982 to June 1990. And he has worked at the National Economic Development Authority during July 1990 up to December 1993. He was with RFM Corporation for 22 years from January 1994 to June 2016. And simultaneously, on year 2005 up to June 2016, he has been working at Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship, Go Negosyo. On June 30th, 2016, he continued serving as the Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. His fields of experience are the following: macroeconomics, trade, industry and business development, investment promotion and protection policies, job generation policies and program, international trade collaboration and negotiation, digitalization of MSMEs, e-commerce development, logistics and supply chain, ease of doing business and anti-red tape policies, MSMEs development, consumer protection, pricing and standards compliance, corporate visioning, strategy development and implementation, corporate marketing, mergers and acquisitions, investors relations. On top of that, he has received several awards such as the 2016 Nation Builders Award for Government Service and the Philippine Innovation Man of the Year Award in 2017. In 2018, he received from President Duterte the Presidential Award, Order of Sikatuna with a rank of Datu, one of the senior honors that one can receive in the Philippines. He was also named by People Asia as one of the 2020 People of the Year for the reopening of the economy during the pandemic. Just recently, he was also awarded the Presidential Medal of Merit for his vital role in the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. He got his master's degree in development economics class at Williams College, Massachusetts, USA, and his AB degree in economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics. Here to give us valuable information and his reaction analysis. Please welcome the Honorable Ramon M. Lopez.
Thank you very much, Director Mafi, Kai. So this is Citizen Ramon Lopez. Good afternoon po sa inyong lahat. Greetings to all of you, the leadership also of the APCU, Chairman Raul Lambino, President Jeffrey Nang, APCU Laureate, Mr. Wilson Lee Flores, General Pase, Professor Ana, and all of you po, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. It's really a very interesting and excellent presentation by our good friend Wilson. Very passionate indeed, and he knows the ins and outs and really the historical part of our relations, the Philippine-China relations. And I totally agree with all the recommendations, the assessment, and the opportunities, the various opportunities that he presented. I also agree that there has to be more neutrality in the way news on China are presented. There's certainly full of wisdom in the presentation of our good friend Wilson. So congratulations at maraming salamat. We all agree that as our two nations celebrate our 47th anniversary of diplomatic relations, we know that the roots of our trade and culture bonds span longer than that, as presented by Wilson. Nag-umpisa pa yan with the Chinese merchants trading with their Filipino counterparts even before the Spanish arrived on our shores in the 16th century. And our two countries deepened bilateral ties throughout the years. And as presented, we saw this relationship grow during the Marcos Sr. presidency. And it thrived during the time of then President Macapagal Arroyo, our Chairman Emeritus of APCU. It was also during the term of Philippine President Rodrigo Roa Duterte and his independent foreign policy in 2016 that this relationship began to flourish again. As neighbors, kapitbahay, no? Relations have generally warmed.
Sorry, sir, we muted everyone. Sorry, sir, proceed. Sorry po.
Sige, thank you. Let me just repeat that as neighbors, relations have been generally warm between our two countries, on business and culturally friendly, with strong people-to-people ties. And as we all know, many families, especially our Filipino-Chinese families and clans, originated from China, and a wide area and fields of cooperation, culturally, in science and technology, trade and commerce, industry cooperation, and also on investments. And we are grateful on the various fields of cooperation and assistance, such as I remember during the early part of the pandemic, the vaccines donated by China about 17 months ago, March of 2021, was the first batch of Sinovac COVID-19 vaccines our country had. That donation, which the Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Wang Xilian, worked hard for, and backed up by no less than Chinese President Xi Jinping, has brought much hope to the Filipino people. The arrival of that vaccine and the immediate rollout of the vaccination program the following day certainly brought about heightened optimism in seeing the beginning of the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. That surely jump-started the successful vaccination program and eventually the revival of greater business and consumer confidence on the road to recovery. The Philippines has also been actively participating in China's major economic and trade platforms to promote trade and investment, like the China International Import Expo, the China ASEAN Expo or Ka-Expo, and the China International Fair for Trade and Services, CIFTIS. In addition, we are the guest country of honor at the China International Fair for Investments and Trade, CIFIT, for 2 years. Furthermore, our country has been taking an active role in what was mentioned as the Belt and Road Initiative of President Xi Jinping. And I remember attending the very first conference and even the succeeding conferences done in the course of promoting the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative. Even with the pandemic, we convened the 29th Philippine-China Joint Commission on Economic and Technical Cooperation. In government, in DTI, we usually call it JCETC, even through a video conference because of the pandemic. In fact, only last November of last year, we did this with Commerce Minister Wang Wentao to discuss various areas of cooperation. We discussed the expansion of our agricultural exports to China, noting the successful accreditation of Philippine fresh young coconuts, the individually quick frozen IQF fruits, the Hass avocado, for entry into the Chinese market. Both sides welcome also the deepening of bilateral cooperation on e-commerce, on digital trade for MSMEs, trade facilitation, including the retail and logistics. That's part of the e-commerce value chain, as well as discussions on the green economy. The pandemic, coupled by the Russia-Ukraine issue, has really disrupted the global supply chain. It added cost pressures on commodities and inflationary scenarios around the world. It is now that we should work more closely together to prevent protectionist measures like tariff, non-tariff barriers, export tax, or bans. This is where trade and rules-based arrangements like the ASEAN-China FTA, where Philippines is part of, as well as what we've been pushing for in the past administration, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. These are important to maintain smoother trade flows and really as our way towards economic recovery. The Chinese side recognized as well the Philippines' push on major infrastructure projects under the Build, Build, Build program. Both sides noted also the major economic reforms being done by the Philippines in an effort to really promote investments in the country, liberalizing foreign equity restrictions, allowing from 40% to 100% foreign equity ownership in many industries, particularly the public service, the retail trade, and the part of the Foreign Investment Act, which were eventually signed into laws by President Duterte. Giving particular importance to the immense opportunities working with the second largest economy in the world, the DTI Philippines Trade and Investment Centers, or PTIC, were established not only in 1, but 4 areas in China. In Beijing, so meron tayong post in Beijing, in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, and also in Hong Kong. That can engage with Chinese enterprises pursuing going out strategies, as well as help Filipino investors or exporters to pursue their expansion program in China, in the Chinese market. We note, however, that there are challenges amidst these bright news and developments. And I'm referring to the perennial issue on the territorial disputes in the West Philippine Sea. And of course, the non-acceptance of the arbitration ruling under UNCLOS. The question is, what do we make of the arbitration ruling, which is challenged by the other side? To many, there is wisdom in allowing time to settle this. I recall former President Duterte saying that there are problems that cannot be solved right away. It may not be now, but there could be a solution in the future. That for me is wisdom. And that is also a position that is being shared by the leadership in China. These issues should not prevent our two countries from expanding cooperation on many areas through win-win collaborations. Cooperation on many fields with mutual benefit. We have enjoyed great business relations. For instance, on investment. In recent years, China ranked either the first or second in foreign direct investments. From just about $8 million, I mean, very, very minimal, $8 million annual average FDI in 2010 to 2015 period, investments jumped to $47 million in 2017, not yet too high, but certainly several multiples already. But this 47 jumped further to $975 million, almost $1 billion in 2018. And in 2019, up to $1.7 billion. No? And eventually it accounted for about 32% of total foreign investments in the Philippines. It built the third telco in the country with China Telecom. There were investments in IT, in services, in manufacturing, such as the iron and steel industry, with, in particular, a company we also visited and invited called Panhua Steel, a leading Chinese producer in the world of flat steel products, as the main investor. And they are right now in Jensan and hoping to expand more in the Fibidec area. More recent investments from China in the Philippines that we can cite is the APF Group Holding Corporation, producers of slabs and hot-rolled coils in Misamis Oriental, and Florida Blanca Steel Industries, an export producer of steel pipes in Pampanga. Meanwhile, there is the Liangan Power Corporation, a renewable energy developer in Lanao del Norte, while Hydrocore is developing the Ibulao Hydroelectric Project in the Ifugao province. We'd also like to cite the millions of Filipino-Chinese businesses in manufacturing and retail in the country, as well as several Filipino-Chinese communities in the Philippines with strong ties to their Filipino neighbors. But even with all these business deals, there's still a wide range of investment opportunities available in our country that Chinese investors can take advantage of presently. And these include manufacturing of electronics, as you know, the Philippines is a large exporter of electronics. Electronics account for 62% of our total exports. The Internet of Things, the smart manufacturing, and AI, among so many others. We would also like to see more collaboration on the digital payment infrastructures and system. And as you all know, those who have been to China, most of you would have gone to China. China is leading in this area, using only smartphone most of the time as they do their purchases. Automotive industry is also one area, especially they're now one of the leading, if not the leading, based on the latest report. They have surpassed already the sales of e-vehicles of Tesla. And the e-vehicle industry is one that we're trying to promote and have collaboration with China. The e-bikes, the bicycles as well. Light industries, manufacturing for connectivity devices, medical devices even, pharmaceuticals, even vaccine manufacturing, which were already being studied by various companies, even to start with a fill and finish vaccine manufacturing facility. Construction materials, I mentioned also iron and steel. Textile manufacturing, we're trying to invite the largest textile manufacturer based in Shanghai. Agri-tech systems, such as the high-yielding variety hybrid rice. There's a facility in Nueva Ecija under a Philippine-China cooperation project. Food and agribusiness sectors. Energy. For Philippines, we're still harnessing natural gas and LNG, liquefied natural gas, and there can be exploration in this particular area. Not to mention the renewable energy, solar, wind facilities, and also the parts manufacturing of all these renewable energy systems. And recently, even nuclear energy is one area that we can have collaboration on which China is the third largest in the world in terms of capacity. We can also collaborate on SMNR, the small and modular nuclear reactors that's being studied now by the Department of Energy. Moving on to trade, China is the largest trading partner, with total trade last year amounting to $38.3 billion. China was also the Philippines' second largest export destination, with total exports doubling to almost $12 billion in 2021 from just about $6 billion in 2015. So last year, our top 5 product categories for export to China were in terms of value, were digital integrated circuits, semiconductor devices, storage units, and minerals, such as nickel ores, concentrates, cathodes, and related copper products. Apart from these top export categories, we also place emphasis on increasing our export to China. Again, apart from electronics, auto parts and e-vehicle parts, medical devices, fresh and processed agri-based products. For instance, coconut value-added products, biotech-based coconut, geotextile nets. Other products would be even luxury consumable items, maternal and infant products, and as mentioned, even tourism in terms of services, education services, and creative services. The Philippines also imported around 26 billion from China, making the latter the top import source for the Philippines. Let's remember that importation is also critical as we are part of a global value chain, where over 60% of total imports are capital goods and intermediate goods. In other words, these are inputs as well to our production activities and will help lower our production cost. Apart from the significant total values of trade, the growth rate is similarly impressive, with total bilateral trade increasing by almost 25% from 2020 to 2021. We can also recall that China was the second largest source of tourists in the pre-pandemic times. And as Wilson said, we expect that we should be reviving this as soon as we all overcome the pandemic. And of course, even as the quarantine restrictions and the zero COVID policy would eventually be lifted by on the China side. Because on our side, we have really opened up tourists and travel in the country. Under the Marcos presidency, the friendly bilateral relationship under the Marcos senior administration, added by under the presidency of former President GMA and former President Duterte. So we see that despite the territorial dispute, the friendly bilateral relationship definitely is one of the legacies of these presidents, in particular, even President Duterte's administration. And it has resulted, as presented above, the clear and tangible benefits for both countries. We have revived last year the Joint Commission on the ETC, serving as a platform, one that can be called as a strategic cooperation. We want not only to survive, but to thrive. Again, China remains to be a strong and strategic partner of the Philippines under the new Marcos administration. President Marcos Jr. has said that he wants to shift the relations with China into a higher gear and that China is the Philippines' strongest partner. China will continue to be seen as a top contributor to the Philippines' economic agenda. We can expect more engagements, more dialogue between the leaders, PBBM, President Bongbong Marcos, and President Xi Jinping. Wilson mentioned the strong goodwill of the Marcos family with the leadership of China, and we can definitely capitalize on that moving forward, making use of that strong goodwill to our advantage. We can expect this time a more balanced, pragmatic approach promoting peace and development. Relationship must be constructive, productive, not destructive. We can consider all this joint exploration, bilateral, multilateral cooperation on oil and gas, on energy, on infrastructure, on agri, fisheries, environmental cooperation. We should definitely take this opportunity to organize more trade and investment promotion activities with priority industry sectors in China. Through the Department of Trade and Industry, we have a total of 18 strong China investment leads generated in the past 3 years, whose areas of interest include the integrated steel mills, automotive and motorcycle manufacturing, the hyperscalers, the builders of data centers, mining and EV, battery manufacturing, agribusiness, vaccine manufacturing, textile and garments, IT equipment, and connectivity device manufacturing, training and R&D chemicals, and energy. Let me cite also the recent pronouncement of Ambassador Wang Xilian. The recent exchanges between President Marcos and high-level Chinese officials signaled the continuity of strong bilateral relations and certainty, which will promote continued interest of Chinese business community in doing business in the Philippines. China will be interested in big agri projects as they will import more tropical fruits, will share technologies in support of agri production. And again, I highlight technology as a game changer in our agriculture production system. The big infrastructure, their participation in all these infrastructure projects, which we know will continue to be a priority agenda of the Marcos administration. And the big data, telecommunications, big energy projects, new renewable energy, electric vehicle, and so on and so forth. And of course, enhance people-to-people exchanges. So moving forward, we can generate new impetus into building stronger productive ties, also as a form of confidence building as we navigate towards an eventual win-win resolution of disputes. With this, we can expect continuity for now and more stability, but we need mutual respect and mutual understanding. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Sir Mon, for that equally extensive, very informative, and very enlightening presentation. Thank you very much, sir. Just to inform you, Professor Bobby has notified me just few hours ago that he can't make it today because of some pressing matters he needs to attend urgently. He will not be able to join us. He sends his apology and congratulations to Mr. Flores and also to Secretary Mon Lopez. So let's move on to the next exciting part of our program, which is the open forum. So I'll be asking the first question. Our friends can write their questions in the chat box if you have some questions, which for me, parang wala na akong may tanong kasi lahat na na-explain ni Sir Mon at saka ni Wilson. But I have a question here, and also this is, I think, the question of Wilson earlier, and I think I will address this to Secretary Mon. Sir, what about the RCEP? How important it is? Kasi until now po, hindi pa rin nararatify ang RCEP ng Senado. How important it is to the country, and kung madidelay pa to, I mean, if it would be delayed for some time before it could be ratified, what will be the cost to the country, economically speaking? Because ang focus natin ngayon, sir, di ba, economics, no? It's more on the economics.
Oh, tama, Professor Ana. You know, RCEP is really very, very important. We cannot afford not to be part of RCEP. And we've really emphasized that RCEP, imagine that accounts for almost a third of the world's GDP, a third of the world's trade. In fact, 50% of manufacturing, global manufacturing output, they are all in these RCEP areas. And what it does, it really will help promote not only market access to these RCEP participating countries, but remember, if you have this market access and FTAs, which is really what many countries are really just trying to be part of, and it's good that we are part of this 15-country RCEP partnership or agreement. What's important with that market access is it will attract investments in participating countries. So imagine if Philippines is not part of RCEP, no, any investor that we are trying to attract now after passing CREATE, after passing PSA, Public Service Act, retail trade, etc., will be sayang. No? So because why will they locate in the Philippines where they will have lesser market access to the RCEP countries, and they will instead go to countries that are part of RCEP, which would have better market access if they locate in those countries. And many really are saying that, you know, there's a strong opposition from the agriculture sector. You know, we've met them, we've explained to them, we've explained also to all the senators that frankly, RCEP has not included a new sensitive agricultural product. So it's really a misimpression. It's just unfortunately full of noise. But when you go to the details, and the facts would show that it is not affecting the agriculture sector. In fact, kasi exempted pa rin sila, excluded pa din sila in this agreement. So there are only 33 agriculture products included, but these are not considered the sensitive items. Very, very protected ang ating agriculture sector. And you know what? Actually, the more if you're not part of this, actually we will be missing out on agricultural export market access. Tatamaan palalo ang agriculture sector if we are not part of this. Kasi remember, there are many products, papaya, pineapple, the value-added products. We were able to negotiate that these products will have lower tariff in many of the countries we're selling to Japan, to South Korea, to everyone, the partners, no, natin. We were able to lower down the tariff rates. So now, if we are not a signatory yet, we will not realize this reduction in tariff. Pupunta ngayon, I mean, mawawala pa yung market share natin. That's my worry, really. If we delay this, the other market, the other countries exporting to these countries will now have an advantage because their market tariff, their tariff rates will go down and they will have better market access. They will even grab our market share. Kunwari, 90% tayo market share. Baka bumaba pa tayo sa 50% market share because mas accessible sila yung products nila to the RCEP countries. So these are my worries and the investment, foregone investment that might happen. However, so moving forward, so what happened naman? Why was it not ratified? Well, because of this, some senators are saying that they need to study more the RCEP. And of course, there was an initial statement from the current president now, President Bongbong, that he would really like to review this. But talking to all the secretaries of the current administration, the economic managers, from Secretary Jokno, Secretary Balisacan, Secretary Fred Pascual of DTI, as well as even BSP Governor Philip Medalla, they are unanimous. And all the other secretaries, I would suspect, unanimous in supporting RCEP. And they have recommended already to the President on the importance, the urgency of passing RCEP. Now, relating this to the senators, we are confident that many of the senators have studied this, and I think we now have the votes. I think we can more or less be expecting that this RCEP will be ratified early in the new forthcoming Congress, the 19th Congress, which will start, I think, on July 25. No, so we just hope that towards August, we can have a ratification of this so that we can really start enjoying the benefits of this and we will not be left behind. So that is where we stand right now on RCEP.
Thank you, Sir Mon. We really hope that this coming Congress will be able to see the benefits and the importance of RCEP at maratify na po the soonest possible time. My second question, Sir Mon, will be for Wilson Flores, kasi sir, you were part of the cabinet member or of the cabinet of the former President Duterte. So Wilson, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, how would you grade President Duterte's foreign policy, especially the situation or the state of Philippine-China relation during the previous administration? Because hindi pa natin pwedeng ma-compare to now kasi ilang days pa lang naman, ang 25 or 26 days pa lang si PBBM. So can you give us very quickly your rate and why? Justify it.
I think 9.
9. Why 9?
My staff are always complaining when I was a teacher in college. I never give a perfect score because I believe nobody's perfect. But the president, President Duterte, and especially officials like the enlightened leaders like Secretary Mon Lopez, they have done outstanding work to normalize Philippine-China relations in the past 6 years, amazingly. You know, Ms. Anna, when Duterte came to power, I was still apprehensive. How could any politician repair the problems of the previous 6 years? There was so much animosity, so much conflicts. There was a cold shoulder treatment on both sides. I think I was so worried in the economic point of view, we would lose out on the biggest market in the world. China was emerging as the largest consumer market for anything, whether it's coffee, whether it's bananas or luxury goods, tourism. China is the ultimate dream of everyone. Even the Catholic Church, the St. Francis Xavier died outside the shores of China, dreaming of the China market. We would lose out. Suddenly, this president, former President Duterte, when he came to power in his first year in office, he turned around 180 degrees amazingly with political boldness. I think it was political audacity, unprecedented. Kasi when you do that, you would get all these brickbats, all these media, social media attacks. Kasi the previous 6 years was so negative, the atmosphere on both sides. So I credit President Duterte and his outstanding leaders like Secretary Mon Lopez. In fact, when this RCEP gets passed, hopefully this year, one of the heroes of RCEP in the Philippines is Secretary Mon Lopez. All the small entrepreneurs, not the big guys, the small entrepreneurs, the farmers in Mindanao and all these people. Do you know it's not only the business people in the Philippines, even the New Zealand Chamber, the Korean Chamber, the American Chamber, the Australian Chamber in the Philippines are all in support of Secretary Lopez and RCEP. So what they have done in the past 6 years is something future generations will always reap. You know, before the pandemic, when I was invited to Shanghai or other major China cities, when I walk in the major commercial centers, I would see fruit shops, luxury fruit shops in Shanghai. And in front, I could see Philippine bananas proudly advertised na these are Philippine bananas. May pula pa. I've never in my life seen, I have not bought or eaten red bananas in the Philippines, but I saw there red bananas in Shanghai. And I asked the shopkeeper, is this more expensive or cheaper? This is more expensive. I have not even eaten red bananas in the Palanca or Kamuning or in Metro Manila or Makati. We are very lucky that they have normalized Philippine-China relations. And it's more the economic interest of the Philippines I'm thinking of. Thank you to Secretary Mon Lopez and to our former President Duterte for the courage and the wisdom of repairing our ties to back to normal. It was normal, yung friendship for thousands of years. The things that were not good years, those were not normal years. So I would rate 9 out of 10, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, in all of the questions that I have here that I collected, you've answered already. I only have 2 more questions to ask, and then we will proceed to the next part of our program, which is the closing remarks. So let me ask the other question, no? And both of you can answer. The first question is about the latest thing, no? Because this is the latest, the railway project. What do you think of it? In terms of what do you think it will push through? What do you think should be the best course of action on the part of the Philippine government with regard to the 3 railway projects that, you know, it's, I think, under negotiation at the moment? Very quick answer from both of you.
Secretary first.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Sir.
Thank you.
Well, for me, as we've heard the pronouncement of President Marcos Jr. on this, and I think there is wisdom to what he's saying, that to simply renegotiate. No, tama yung pinoint out ni Wilson kanina, hindi dapat sabihin umatras. Actually, ang sinasabi lang, i-review uli yung terms dito because there's also a chance for us to get better terms. I think that was the main reason why those contracts did not push through. And I think there is really wisdom in really renegotiating, and because the other terms that we got, like from Japan, are really super low concessional loan terms. And therefore, yun naman pwedeng i-work out. Dito maganda yung point out kanina, Wilson, na yung leverage, yung goodwill natin with China, all the history and all that, dito magandang ipasok na talagang we should be at least on the concessional terms, bigyan pa tayo ng mas magandang terms moving forward para talagang magawa natin lahat itong mga infrastructure, vital infrastructure projects natin dito. So it's a blessing in disguise.
Thank you, sir. Wilson, quickly, before the last question.
Yes, I agree with Secretary Mon Lopez that when we negotiate now, President Marcos has the advantage of emotional, historical ties. And also, I think we should not forget the Chinese people are among the best in tawad or negotiating. So let us also negotiate with them.
Maintindihan
I
nila.
could not forget, there was a, I don't know, it was a Japanese politician in the Nikkei conference. He said, I was there. He said, in other countries, Russia, others, they don't negotiate. If you walk out, they don't care about you. But in China, though, when you try to buy something and you say, ay, mahal, I just walk out, kunyari, they will run after you and give you better terms. Maybe they could give us a few more free bridges worth millions of pesos. So let us negotiate with China patiently, but let us not give up. And I look forward to railway built by China, because I remember an American professor told me, in China, you can ride the train everywhere in China. But in the US or in this country, you cannot ride the train everywhere. So they're really good at trains. Let us negotiate the best price and terms. I agree with, sana si Secretary Mon Lopez be one of those negotiators, because he also has goodwill among foreign countries.
Okay, thank you so much. The last question is from Mr. Lino Robles. Sabi niya, how is the progress of China Telecom going right now? The Filipinos are expecting that their entry to the country will improve the telecom competition, which will lower the cost of internet in the country while improving its efficiency. I think Secretary Lopez will be the best person to answer this.
Yeah. Well, may recent update kami that natanggap dito, and actually this is even beyond our yung past June 30 na to, after administration. The latest update that I saw was that the third telco already has about 10 million subscribers. So talagang nag-move na siya. They were able to offer, and of course for you to penetrate this very competitive industry sector, you really have to provide a good package, di ba? Para ikaw ay susubukan ulit, no? So
yes.
Usually yun ang strategy nga dito. But I guess more than that is that the more players can really lead to greater competition and better service, faster Mbps, internet speed, and more location that would have good signals, less drop calls. And beyond all and of course the affordable prices, no? And beyond that, importante pa rin the policy environment. The policy, even during the time of President Duterte, inumpisahan na natin, i-liberalize even yung mga broadband, in the satellite, the use of satellite that will improve broadband, internet connectivity, the sharing of the telco towers. All these policy moves through executive orders were issued by then President Duterte. So with that right policy environment, you can expect really more and better services, quality, top speed at affordable prices. So I mean, we should encourage more of this. So gumagalaw siya, and congratulations to the third player.
Thank you so much, Sec Lopez, Sec Mon. Thank you very much to both of you for extensively and very enlightening answering all the questions, and also for your very enlightening, really, a presentation, very informative in many ways, no? Kahit ako, ang dami kong natutunan po. Before I move on to the last part of our program, I would like to announce first the next month APCU Forum with APPCU laureates. This will be on August 18 at 3 p.m. That would be a Thursday, 3 p.m. This is via Zoom. The topic is, again, very interesting. It's strengthening people-to-people relation through Chinese language and cultural programs. The main speaker is Professor Kevin Pamintuan, also a APPCU 2022 laureate under major contribution category and the director of Confucius Institute, Angeles University Foundation. And there will be two speaker reactors, Dr. Lourdes Nepomuceno, IPPCU 2021 laureate under the Outstanding Contributions category, and also the director of the UP Diliman Confucius Institute. And the last and the other two speaker reactor will be Dr. Cynthia Liang, Director of Confucius Institute, Ateneo de Manila University. So friends and colleagues, I hope to see you next month. It will be very interesting. This is more on cultural and language relations, people to people with Philippine-China, about Philippine-China relations. So that's very interesting. So moving on to the last part of the program, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the President of APPCU, Mr. Jeffrey Nang, for the closing remarks. Sir Jeff, please proceed. Sir Jeff? Sir Jeff, you are co-host, so you can unmute yourself po.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, APCO Chairman, Secretary Raul Lambino, fellow trustees, officers, and members of the Association for Philippines-China Understanding, or APCU, to our distinguished resource speakers, Wilson Lee Flores, and former DTI Secretary and my UP School of Economics classmate, Ramon Lopez, to our official media partner, Manila Times, to our media friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to all. The renaissance of the friendly and good bilateral relations between the Philippines and China, despite existing differences, is one of the legacies of the Duterte administration that yielded tangible and concrete benefits for both countries and our two peoples. For instance, China donated around 5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the Philippines at the height of the pandemic, and a further 52 million doses through commercial procurement. China thus far remains the largest trading partner of the Philippines and the country's second largest source of foreign investment. We have territorial disputes with China. Yes, they are serious, but it is not the be-all and end-all of our relationship with China. Our relations with China should not be centered on the disputed South China Sea, but instead, it should be multifaceted, with an economic phase, a political phase, a cultural phase, a health phase, an education phase, and a Filipino people to Chinese people phase. Indeed, the Philippines-China bilateral relations have not only improved under the Duterte administration, but have been upgraded to a comprehensive strategic cooperation. Such friendly bilateral ties between the Philippines and China can be credited to President Duterte's independent foreign policy. Moving forward, Philippines-China relations under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s presidency no doubt will be more vibrant and even stronger. It was no less than President Marcos Jr. himself who said that our strongest partner has always been, in that regard, our close neighbor and our good friend, the People's Republic of China. President Marcos hopes that the relations between China and the Philippines will shift to a higher gear and lead to more fruitful and meaningful outcomes for our two countries under his administration. No doubt, President Marcos Jr. can deepen exchanges at various levels with China in the economy, trade, infrastructure, energy, culture, and education. As the country begins reconstructing from the effects of the pandemic, crucial breakthroughs can be achieved through a whole of society approach in both our countries through mutual cooperation and understanding. Thus, we must embrace the low-cost technology that China can offer, from basic infrastructure to high-speed railways, learn from rural health experts to agriculture specialists, welcome tourists, students, business people, academics, and foster sister city to city, province to province, university to university tie-ups all over the Philippines. A united front approach that will advance us forward. On this note, let us join hands and build on the existing opportunities and avenues to further strengthen Philippines-China relations and understanding under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s presidency. On behalf of APPCU, I would like to congratulate and extend my sincere gratitude to both our resource speakers for sharing their ideas, knowledge, and experience about this topic. Let me express as well my gratitude to all who have joined and participated in this APPCU Forum with the theme Opportunities and Challenges in Philippines-China Relations under a Marcos Jr. presidency. I am sure each one of us have learned a lot from our two esteemed speakers. Indeed, your presence and active participation have made this forum a fruitful and productive endeavor. Again, thank you and good afternoon to all of you. See you next month for our next APPCU Forum.
Thank you so much, Sir Jeff. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, our forum has come to an end. On behalf of the members and trustees of APPCU, I would like to express our sincere thanks to everyone for joining this forum. We would like as well to express our sincere and heartfelt thanks to the Manila Times for being the official media partner of today's forum. Manila Times is indeed very supportive of APPCU activities, and we do appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that we learned so many things because I've learned many things from this forum. We will see you again next month for another edition of APPCU Forum with our 2022 APPCU laureates. Once again, a pleasant afternoon to all. Thank you and maraming salamat po. Salamat, Sir Mon, and
Thank
salamat,
you.
Sir Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Classmate
much.
Mon.
And salamat, Wilson. Thank you po.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Wilson.
President Wilson.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Secretary Mon Lopez and others.
And
Thank you,
congrats
Anna.
pala, Wilson.
Wait,
APPCU
thank you,
laureate.
Secretary.
Oh,
Congratulations.
yes, sir.
Well deserved.
Mag-coffee tayo,
Congrats,
Secretary.
Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you. That's Jeff, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tech Lambino.
Thank you, President Jeffrey and Chairman Lambino and everyone. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank